Our next presenter is Brad Saville. Brad is president and CEO of Landmark Commercial Real Estate in Wichita, one of the larger full-service commercial real estate companies in South Central Kansas. Brad has over 25 years experience in the commercial real estate industry and ranks as one of the top retail brokers in Kansas. Brad has specialized in retail, restaurant, and development projects and represented Cabela's in several states, as well as other national retailers and restaurants, including Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Discount Tire, Dunkin' Donuts, and emerging concepts such as Black Bear Diner. Brad is active in the International Council of Shopping Centers and attends several national conventions and meetings each year. He's previously served on the board of directors at the Kansas CCIM chapter for over 20 years and served as president in 1998, 1999, 2004, and 2012. Please join me in welcoming Brad Saville.
All right, yeah, when Kristen called and said, hey, can you do development? I said, sure, and then as time grew closer, I said, I better get something put together. So then we went to Chicago yesterday, I went to ICSC, and I was thinking, last year was pretty simple for me being in a retail restaurant. We look at who closed and who opened, and then this year development, I started thinking, that is a really broad category. And so now it's probably going to be fairly redundant. But and then I got the email that says, by the way, don't talk about anything local that everybody already knows about. So we'll just see where this goes. First of all, who knows what this is? Oh man, everybody got it. So what she wanted me to talk about was trends and changes. So we were just thinking about what's changed. And I remember 2 years ago when Nick and I were working on Spaghetti Works, and our partners in Kansas City called and said, hey, you guys need to do chicken and pickle downtown. At that point, I didn't even know what it was. And we thought that was something cool we could do downtown. And now we look at, we had a company event there at George's project last weekend, and it was just the best time of our life. Why am I bringing this up? Because, that lot sat there for 10 years by the alley, and who would have thought we'd all be playing pickleball, an event that was really just enjoyed by seniors in Phoenix. And now we're all out there doing that, drinking, having a great time. So I think as developers, I think we need to be thinking about, where things need to be. We can't be developing things that were popular a few years ago. And so developers are taking on a lot of risk, a lot of investment, and it's really is important to be up with the times, up with the trends, and developing something that's relevant. So I'm just going to go through some different trends and talk about a few things. Some things that we hear about, we don't know why they affect real estate, or even if they do. But some of the things we hear about, like drones are delivering groceries, drones are delivering food. They're testing those things. Driverless semi-trucks. And you hear about these changes in technology, different things, and you wonder, that's really cool. But those things actually affect real estate as well. On the click list with Dillon's, we talk about that. That's a new trend, but what does that mean? In some of the bigger cities, that increases industrial space because they have more demands for those products, and they're building more climate-controlled warehouses close to cities. There's things that are changing in our culture and our the way we do things that are actually changing real estate. So the first thing, developers are shifting product types. Well, so many years ago there was lots of retail developers that I knew, and that's what they did. They built power centers, shopping centers. Now more than ever, you're seeing those same developers start to refocus. They're looking at multifamily, industrial, different things that are going to be relevant and growing faster in the future. So we're seeing developers really open up their eyes and get into some different segments. Those changing demographics and those hot new build markets, and I'll mention a few of those in a minute. But the multifamily is just unbelievable. This changing demographic is these young people want to remain flexible. And I think about what happened to the old American dream. Everybody wants to grow up and buy a house, and those days apparently are not happening anymore. But Now it's about being simplistic and being flexible, and if they can move to a different city, and that seems to be popular now. So that's really driving the multifamily. On the industrial side, we're just barely starting to see some of this in Wichita. Talking to like Ted Branson in the office, he has several groups that are looking for trucking centers, south and north. 15 to 20 acres, and want to build some type of a trucking facility. What's going on there? Trucking is bigger than ever. With Amazon, again, that's popular. We know that, but that's creating all the need for these fulfillment centers. Industrial space is really changing. It's not just warehouses. There's actually things happening in these warehouses. They're fulfilling orders. They're fulfilling packages, pack and ship. Some of these now need to be more climate controlled to ship these products to your door. So developers must adapt. We talked about that a little bit. So we're talking about what are these changes? How do they adapt? We talked about e-commerce and changing the industrial specs. When we look at Wichita, Wichita's trying to get behind some industrial development. We heard quite often that we need more spec space. Really, I was hearing that a lot the last 2 years, that everybody, including ourselves, was talking to developers. Let's go build some more industrial spec space. We don't have the buildings large enough. When these we get these emails and calls from Andrew, and they're looking for 1 million square feet, and they want to look at space tomorrow, or there are guys coming through town, and everybody scrambles to show them what we have, and a lot of times we don't have what they're looking for. But yet, our problem in Wichita is that there's still not that confidence that you see in places like Dallas, Fort Worth, where people are actually going to go build spec, even with the city giving lots of incentives and doing tax abatements and things and trying to help developers. We just don't have the developer confidence in Wichita to go do those things. And so we're probably missing out on some of those prospects that are looking for something that's ready sooner rather than later. But we don't have that confidence here, just that we see in bigger cities. I'm going to get into retail in a little bit and then talk about the millennials and Gen Z and kind of how that's affecting development. But before I do, talking about the office space, and they touched on that earlier, and I think Patrick did a good job of that. But in Wichita, we talked. Christian said, "How does that filter down to Wichita?" So in Gary's project, talking to Charlie this weekend, we were having dinner a few nights ago. So every day in Kansas City, there's a call for a 15,000 foot tenant or a 100,000 foot tenant. If there's a 15,000 foot tenant in Wichita, it's a party, it's a marching band. We're breaking up the wine. It is a big deal. And so in Kansas City, that's happening all the time. Every day. So, you were speaking to, what do we do about more tenants not coming here? How do we address that? And we just, everybody can try to do things, but it's a slow process. And so that's where I'm happy talking to Andrew, and the city, they're trying to do everything they can to try to help local businesses grow and expand and do what they can. I think there's been a new emphasis on that. Remember our local business as well as helping new businesses come. So what are the millennials and Gen D demand, Generation Z demand? These are some things downtown, and when we started that Spaghetti Works project 4 or 5 years ago, that project had sat there 10, 12 years, and just at the beginning when Wichita was beginning to catch some steam, so we're just so thrilled and proud to be involved with that. But walkability, green buildings, certainly renting versus owning. Renting apartments, both young people and older folks, empty nesters. I talk to so many people now that their kids are gone and they're downsizing and looking at coming back downtown. That's just so exciting, and that's something that's new for Wichita, and that's popular around the country. The live, work, and play. We've seen that being talked about for the last several years, and that's what they want now. And it's just so exciting to be involved in these times of change. Anytime that something happens in Wichita where something completely new happens, where maybe it's downtown, it's hot, and it opens up all kinds of great opportunities, or they get the Greenwich Place project done, that opens up a new subsector. It changes everything for us, and it also changes everything for growers. retailers, because it's not look east or west. Now it's look east, west. We need to look downtown. You need to be aware of this, and it's definitely catching tennis attention. Space efficiency. I remember being in, Nick and I were like in Market Center 25 years ago, and it seems like the offices that we had were like as big as this room, and all these old oil and lawyers, and now people are perfectly happy with small offices. Some of our guys actually like sitting shoulder to shoulder and brainstorming ideas, and so they're using less space, and that's changing things for office developers. They're getting more efficient. One of the things on the, you see a lot of articles and people say retail's dead, and I see that article sent around all the time. And I think that there's a lot of articles written about that really say that that's not what's happening. And I think now more internet-based retailers are starting to open bricks and mortar. And it is true that a lot of retailers are downsizing, that they're going to smaller boxes, smaller bricks and mortar footprint. But just because they have the online presence, they still want the local brick and mortar presence. And I think, frankly, one of the big things is people want a place to return things locally when it doesn't fit. And so that makes consumers more comfortable if they actually have a presence of some kind, whether it's a small store or just some type of a format locally. So, you talk about what's driving development, and I've got a son that lives in Denver, and he tells me how expensive the apartments are out there. The supplies have kept up with the demand. You talk about the marijuana out there, but also they just have so many jobs. It's so unbelievable in some of these markets that are hot right now. That's the sprawling residential development, and that's creating jobs, and the retail and office development's going there. And so we don't have that kind of growth here. We just don't hardly have any growth per se, but as you can imagine, with this type of residential growth and job growth, that's going to create major development for office, retail, residential, hotel, as Nick mentioned. I got this report, and I don't really know what these numbers mean, and I can't find the percentages because it didn't show up on the deal. But what it does say is that we were looking at a report that showed development segment types. As you can see, industrial is demand for these uses is outpacing retail, and that's changed over the years, where retail is the least demand for space, industrial is the highest, multifamily is right there in the middle. I just wanted to express that there's that change, and that it's everybody knows about it, but the e-commerce, amongst other things, is creating quite a demand for industrial space. And it's not just the industrial space like we've always known, like we talked about, more demand for industrial right outside of cities, more demand for climate controlled industrial. This is just a quick deal that shows where how things change. And you can see the purple line there on the top. That's something that's new that started in 2015 when e-commerce got really big, and those are fulfillment centers. Here's a project in McKinney, 1 million square feet is what they have planned. And if you look kind of closely, you're starting to see more parking around these industrial parks. There's more pack and ship, there's more fulfillment. Some of these used to be the semi-truck and the forklift, and we're moving product through. But now there's actually, a lot more happening these days in these industrial projects. Locally, again, they've tried to do some things to stimulate more industrial in Wichita. That's exciting to see, like Hyperpet wants to do a 100,000 square foot expansion. But again, we're just not seeing the things here. Developers in Dallas-Fort Worth are developing these on a 5 or 6 cap, partially spec, because they know there's so much demand. And you talk to Johnny or talk to people, and the demand is not here. There is demand, but it's not enough to get people to go be so bullish and develop these big projects. Another trend that we were involved in, that we're starting to see in some other cities, which there's 3 of these being built in Wichita. They're also building in Tulsa and quite a few other markets, but these are the vertical climate control storage. And You saw these years ago that you all was doing, and you saw them in some big markets where they couldn't get real estate. And so I was used to think, okay, these are going to go on 5 or 6 acres on the edge of town, Butler-style metal buildings, and you put your stuff in there, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I've got one full, and I don't know what's in there, but the demographics are changing, and the new generation. I was asking these guys, what's going on here, and so these guys are going where they used to get 5 or 6 acres and build the traditional self-storage. Now they're buying 2 acres, and they're trying to put these at safe locations close to houses. And I can tell you the zoning and the challenges to get them into the 13th and Mays and 21st and Webb was unbelievable. I mean, so many meetings trying to get these put up there, but they did it. And they've even got one that they've done that's got a Trader Joe's like on the ground level. And so they built them as, trying to make them look as retail or office as possible. But I asked them, what's going on here? Why is this popular now? They've got a bigger demographic that's women. They're safer. Some of their customers, they pull their car in, the garage doors go down. They're safe inside, and their customers are coming frequently, maybe even once or twice a month. There's business owners like pharmaceutical reps or people that distribute things. They come there and they make this part of their business. But because of the changing demographic, and we talked about multifamily being more popular now and rentals being more popular now, the younger people don't have all this stuff. They're not accumulating all the things that people did in my generation. They're starting off simple, and they're just staying more simple. So they have the needs for a unit like this rather than accumulating a big space. And this is something that they're going to use frequently and not just leave their stuff in all the time. Moving over to retail development, kind of the life cycle of kind of what we've seen happen, and then I'll talk about entertainment briefly in a second. But we started off with the Simon malls, and you don't see any more of those built today. The Town West is barely hanging on, but you don't see enclosed malls built anymore. And then we went to the lifestyle and power centers. Those are much more like Bradley Fair that started 25 years ago. And then we saw the big rush of outlet malls, and I think it's still yet to be seen if that's going to be something that's going to stand the test of time. But people still really enjoy doing that. But everything moved to outdoor. People didn't want to go indoors anymore, and that wasn't the thing to do anymore. And so that changed. We had the e-commerce take hold, and what that meant is that boxes got smaller, and it put great pressure on developers. And some of the projects that we did years ago, where the retailer would pay $15 a foot, now today they want the same space for $9 a foot. And how does that happen when construction costs have gone up? Concrete's gone up, steel's gone up. Well, they expect developers to shore up that gap with incentives and other things, but the retailers are very demanding. But there's been some changes there. So now the biggest thing is mixed-use developments. Those include sports-related venues. Those include, even apartments and office and retail, live, work, and play all works together. So that's kind of how things have evolved. And as we've seen some slowdown in some of the big boxes, because when we started to develop years ago, a development didn't really happen unless you had Walmart or Lowe's or Target or, then Costco, all these big boxes, and they definitely have slowed down, and they've gotten into a lot of the markets that they need to be in. And so, with changing times, entertainment, sports related things took the place of those in many instances. When you couldn't have a Walmart, we've got the Cabela's and the Bass Pro, and we've got the Striker Sports, and we've got Top Golf. And to Rod's point, is Wichita late? Yeah, they're late. Like Top Golf went to Oklahoma City first, then they went to Kansas City, and I'm confident eventually we'll get them here. But they usually don't come here first. But I'm just making the point that developers have to remain flexible, and these are the type of anchors that are now acceptable to other retailers when you don't have something like a Walmart or a power center. These entertainment districts that we all know, the Riverfront District is going to be awesome with the new baseball field. That's going to spur more development, retail, restaurants. The Trust Bank Arena, which half the people thought was ridiculous, has completely changed downtown. That is a huge draw with 100 events a year. And, you know, that's enough to spur the development. So development breeds more development. The Greenwich Place, we talked about that, Stryker, Aviate, you know, those are some of the big draws that spur that retail there. So I'm sure I missed some things, but that kind of concludes some of the trends that we're seeing in real estate here and through the Midwest. So, any questions?